But there it goes. Cool. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming along to hear about what we're going to be doing here. And I hope by the time you leave, you'll be really enthused and up for kind of joining us for over these 3 weeks. So I think you've maybe had a chance to kind of have a look at the PDF of the content, but the kind of main idea here is that we're going to take a 12-bar blues in the key of A, and we're actually going to focus just on a single position of the fretboard. So we're going to focus on that kind of fret 5. That fret 5 pentatonic shape that if you've played any pentatonic, you would doubtless have played that shape. And it's a shape that you will play forevermore because there are so many great guitar solos based around that shape that it's like an absolute must-know. And it's where all the great licks that kind of fall under your fingers sit as well. So we're going to kind of start there. We're going to kind of begin by looking at just playing through a basic 12-bar blues using the chords. In the key of A, these would obviously be A7, D7 and E7. So we will look at some bar chords for those, but fear not if bar chords are not your cup of tea. We've also got some other chord voicings you can play that are slightly less demanding in terms of bars, so to speak. They don't include bars, so they're a little bit easier to play. So we work our way through the 3 weeks, working in position 5 in the 12-bar blues in A, and what we're looking to do is develop a bit of vocabulary, essentially, so that by the time you've been through all 3 weeks, you've got like a good few licks under your belt that you feel confident about. And not only that, but also you kind of understand a little bit about how they work in relation to the chords that you're playing them over, essentially. So as we mentioned, in a blues in A, you've got an A7, you've got a D7 and an E7. They don't happen in that exact order, as you may well be aware. But essentially, you're going to encounter each of those chords at some point. And with the vocabulary we're going to learn, we're going to pay particular attention to the kind of notes that we're playing in relation to each chord, ultimately. And the thing is, you can sort of engage with this on, potentially a few different levels. But if you're just interested in learning some licks and getting those under your fingers and playing, then you've come to the right place. If you're interested in then, from there, kind of developing your understanding a little bit about what those licks do, then you've absolutely come to the right place as well. So you can kind of, work on the level that you want to work in that sense. And I appreciate that with potentially so many of us, there'll be some of us will have played more than others and will perhaps be more confident and be a bit more dexterous having played a little longer. And that's cool too, because I thought it would be important to make sure we have a little kind of question session at the end of each week. And then if you've got questions about stuff that we've looked at, we can obviously address those questions, but then I can also kind of recommend some stuff for you to push you in a different direction if you come to me and say, look, Nat, this was cool this week, thank you, but actually I've got those under my fingers already. Is there something else you can recommend me? I can kind of point you in the direction of some other useful stuff that will help you to kind of develop and keep moving forward, rather than just going over stuff, over and over the same stuff, basically.
When you were putting stuff together, I mean, just because we've spoken about this quite a lot, but one of the things I've found when I'm kind of teaching this stuff with my own students is just the idea of improvisation. Like, if we know a pentatonic, a lot of people, and I mean this in the nicest of ways, but we see it on courses as well. They go, I know a pentatonic, and they're throwing out the pentatonic going, look, I could go up and down this scale, but it's not necessarily overly melodic. And then we get to chords, for instance. It's all very well if we're going to say, okay, we're doing like an A blues, and the notes are there for the A blues. And if you're playing A minor pentatonic and you're only using an A minor chord and a D minor chord and an E minor chord, most of the time your notes are going to be fine. But do you think kind of across these 3 lessons, the knowledge can be gained? So let's say we were doing A minor 7 to a D9. Okay, there's an F sharp in that D9. I know I'm going a little theory here, and we haven't got stuff in front of us, guys, to kind of show you that at the moment. But I think, will this course kind of navigate its way around so that if somebody's coming from it from a beginner point of view, they're going to understand it, but somebody who maybe can play the scales already but doesn't have a lot of theory knowledge can go, okay, this has opened up a few more doors for me, and I can say, okay, I'm going to be able to come up with something more melodic. Because the best thing sometimes is actually listening to somebody who's playing less notes, but they're all the right ones. And
Totally.
sometimes you play a wrong note, and you go, that sounded great. Why did that sound great? Okay, well, is it going to kind of discuss those areas across the 3 courses? It's just out of interest for me, because
Yeah, totally. No, good question. I think the answer to that is yes, absolutely, on some level. Obviously, as we said, moving forward in terms of sort of running the weekend courses, that would be an opportunity to kind of explore those areas in more depth, but there will certainly be an opportunity to relate to those areas that you mentioned. For example, in the second lesson, we start to kind of have a look at the arpeggios that accompany each of those chords. So remember, our arpeggios are just single note, basically a chord played as a single note, a chord played melodically. So the first one was A7, that was D7, and then you've got E7 going back to A7 at the end. So basically, if you then get those notes under your fingers, what you can start to do is look at the A minor pentatonic and see where some of those notes from the arpeggios are also notes of the scale in the minor pentatonic. And then obviously you can then say, okay, well, when I'm on an A chord, the most obvious one is when I'm on an A chord, I've got an A note in 3 different places in that position. If I play a little lick that lands on that A over the A7 chord, I'm going to sound really good because basically I'm playing a note of the chord there. I'm landing on one of the notes of the chord. It's almost like you can think of the notes of the chord as being your kind of safe havens almost, because they're the notes that really sound good. And so if you're looking to ultimately move forward with your playing, if you can really establish those fundamentals really well, knowing where the really kind of safe notes are, then it's going to be much easier for you to start looking at notes that kind of are a bit more adventurous as well. So yeah, the kind of looking at the safe option, which doesn't always sound like the most exciting, but it opens up the opportunity to then explore a lot of different areas ultimately.
In your kind of time teaching at ACM, and obviously other stuff and the blues festivals and different things, what's the kind of regular error that you come across with people who are kind of starting out, just in case other people that are online are like, okay, yeah, I do that. That's quite normal. That's something that I could look at. It would be good for them to fix. What's the common kind of things that you go, okay, that's something we should work on?
Yeah, I think often, or more often than not, and I think, and this is something I think we all do when we first kind of checking out something new or learning to play, and it was certainly something that I did and took me a while to get over, which is this idea of kind of actually trying to say something with the notes that you've got. So you mentioned it, Andy, at the start as well. I think that was maybe while we were chatting before, but when you learn a scale, the temptation is you just kind of play it up and down, which kind of makes sense because we're learning a scale shape. It goes from low to high and back again. But obviously when we're listening to great blues guitar solos, there's an element of that, and we hear runs that move from low to high and high to low, but also there's kind of all the stuff in between, where we we hear like a little lick that kind of stays on one note but meanders around that note. So that's not necessarily up and then down, going all the way up and coming back down. It's kind of a bit up, a bit down. It's sort of snaking its way around the notes. And then, this idea of I suppose the musical word for it would be kind of phrasing. So you're trying to make what you play conversational, and the way I try to sort of encourage people to get their head around that is to, yeah, literally relate it to when we're having a conversation. You know, when you converse with someone, obviously you're contributing and you're responding, and you're engaged, and the next thing you say, if you're engaged in the conversation, is kind of motivated by what the other person's said to you to a large extent, and so kind of thinking about playing little pentatonic phrases as almost like you're talking can be a really useful thing, because then it helps you to kind of start thinking about punctuation and stuff, and pausing, taking breaths, the different intonations of your voice, going high and dropping back down low, all kinds of things like this. So it can be really helpful for guitar, because guitar's a weird thing in that I could sit here for the next 4 hours and not stop playing, and everyone would go to sleep or kind of leave, and I'd be left here on my own. But you know, we don't need to breathe, do we, to play? We kind of do, you know what I mean? But it's not like a saxophone or a trumpet, in that we play a phrase and we have to, you know, supply our body with some more air to be able to play another phrase, generally speaking. But with the guitar, it's not like that, because we can breathe independently of creating the notes on the instrument.
I watched a video about that actually recently, where I think it was a friend of ours, Johan Ting, do you know Johan? I think you know Johan, do you?
Yeah,
he's great. And he's one of these guys that plays like, I mean, he's crazy. He's ahead of music. He's been ahead of music forever, but he toured with Take That and everything. And he started off in banking and like made money, bought his house, then went, what do I want to do now? Write songs. And then he supported Take That. And then he did this. Then he became a session musician. Now he's a teacher. Wow. He's like, that's what I want to do. So he's great. But he sent me a video where it was like there was somebody talking about actually one of the best things you can do as a guitarist, especially somebody that's kind of learning to improvise, is listen to saxophonists and their phrasing, because it is sometimes much more like a singer. So if I've found, like, sometimes I'll do it, I don't know whether you do this with your students, but like, okay, you've got your chords nailed, guys, and if you sing, not everyone can sing, but if you can sing, if you can try and sing melodies before you play them, and then you can actually hear that and transfer that onto the instrument, it's quite good, because again, like Nat's saying, you have to breathe. So, and everything I feel, like the emotions that I feel if I've had a bad day, or I've had a good day, or if I'm excited, or if I'm nervous, like, I also need to control those when I'm playing. You know, I can let that in. But, you know, if I go to a gig and, you know, for instance, you know, somebody's very ill in the family or whatever it is, and you've just found out, that can affect you. So actually, one of the, and this is getting to a point that just came into my mind, but one of the key things of really having the theory down, and theory is a horrible word, just like practice. It's like students seem to get scared of the word practice. Well, if we just think, well, we're just playing with knowledge, okay, so what really Nat's supplying is knowledge, and you're going to put that into playing, that's the way you want to do it. And by being able to go, okay, you know, because a lot of the time when people come on the performance course, for instance, like, they're always better on Sunday than they were on Friday, because they've settled. But if you had the knowledge and you could go, I'm just literally going to have like my bullet points in my mind of things that work, then you'll be able to come straight into playing a solo and pretty much play something pretty successfully. And I've kind of read through your thing, Nat, and I think that's really the key of what it does. Can I ask, what's the progression between the 3 lessons? Because the guys haven't been given the PDF. It's on the website. Okay. We'll send you the PDF, which is just the website stuff, and any notes from tonight, guys, after this. But what's the kind of progression that you see? Because obviously in the first one, you're saying, you know, you're working on maybe finding what the notes are. The second one's working on arpeggios. By the time they get to session 3, what would you love somebody to be able to walk away with and be able to achieve by themselves?
Totally, yeah. So essentially, with the 3 weeks, we look at, we've got a kind of new solo each week. I say a new solo, but it's kind of, we learn a solo in week 1, and then the other 2 solos that we look at are sort of directly relatable to the solo we've learned in week 1. So almost like we learn a collection of licks that we can apply to the 12-bar blues, and then we basically elaborate on those a little bit. So we look at variations of those licks. So the idea is, once you've gone through those 3 weeks, you've got definitely a really kind of good pathway through the 12 bar blues as a solo. You've kind of carved yourself a path with these different licks, and then hopefully also you've got some different options around those licks, so that you don't just have to play exactly the same thing every time, because we'll be looking at some variations of these licks. So the idea is you've got options there. So if you were playing, maybe you had that as a lick, and then you also had this. So basically they kind of sound very similar and they kind of end the same, but the notes are in a slightly different order, essentially. So that would give you access to more than one option on the chords.
What about, so you're looking there at scales and melodic notes and how they relate to chords and things. What about, so let's say somebody, so for instance, my background, of course, I'm fine with a pick. I'm gigging all the time. My level is high, but your level is a lot higher with a plectrum. And I know we did this in the 10-minute chat, but we were talking about is it accessible to people who are fingerstyle and plectrum players? Yeah. And in that sense, will there be technique? Is there going to be a discussion on technique? So, for instance, are you going to be playing more likely with a plectrum, and does it matter that other people aren't? And if they aren't, do they need to know about this stuff?
Yeah, totally. Really good question as well. So yeah, I mean, I sort of do both all the time in terms of playing with and without a plectrum, and I think so either can work, and I think most importantly in the style we're talking about, blues, I think it's really important to to reassure everyone that either can work, because, and I remember saying this to you, Andy, as well, if you look at the sort of history of blues electric guitarists, for example, there's all sorts of ways that these folks are kind of are playing. Yes, some of them are playing with a traditional plectrum, but some of them are sort of holding it in different ways. Some players are, take Albert King, for example, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with. He was a lefty. He played the guitar upside down, essentially, and pulled down on the strings, and he played with like these two fingers, basically, and that was part of how he got his particular tone. Albert Collins, another Albert, the master of the Telecaster, so called, he used to play with almost like a classical wrist position, and would kind of play, I think, largely with the thumb and index and middle finger, but he'd be doing that. Another kind of electric player, Stevie Ray Vaughan, you would hear him play with plectrum and with fingers sometimes. So Robert Cray has always played just with fingerstyle. He doesn't use a pick, as far as I know, or certainly he gets a big part of his sound by using his fingers. So yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's an argument to suggest that using your fingers
sounds like the greatest players are fingerstyle players.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I don't mean that, but okay, that's good.
Yeah,
what about materials? I know you won't have written everything yet because there's still some time. But in reality, are you thinking, are there going to be backing tracks or anything? Kind of
definitely.
What kind of thing do you think people will get?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have like a main backing track that we'll be working over for the 12-bar blues in A, which will be kind of like a shuffle feel. So it won't necessarily be this kind of thing, but it'll be that kind of feel. Be this kind of feel. That kind of feel, so like a swung eighth note, bluesy shuffle. Songs like Pride and Joy, Stevie Ray Vaughan would be a good. Every Day I Have the Blues, B.B. King, that kind of feel, if you're familiar with either of those two tracks. Tore Down, Freddie King, that same feel with that one as well, so like a kind of shuffle feel. So there will absolutely be a backing track, which we'll use to work on for the licks. And also the great thing is, with the sort of technology we have nowadays, we can easily manipulate that to be different tempos as well. So if you feel like you want a slightly slower backing track to kind of get started, then that's easy to do. And I think it's a great thing to do, because if you're playing with a slower backing track, you're in the game, because you're playing along with the track, as opposed to working up to a point where you can play along with it. We can just slow it down and get you in there straight away. And I think that there's a greater benefit to be had from that approach as well, because you're actually then musically you're developing your feel, and you're kind of finding your way around sort of more in real time. So
that's good. Yeah. There was a couple of questions that came through. It's probably worth me asking, and then maybe we can open it up to see if other people have questions. Yeah. So Norman, this sound like I'm on Blue Peter. Norman says, ladies and gentlemen, he said, "Hi Nat." It was mentioned that Nat will be teaching 3 solos. Just a couple of questions based around that. I think you kind of just answered it actually, really, because it said, will the solos be in different blues styles, i.e. a slow blues or a blues shuffle, blues rock? But I think what we're saying is it's probably that you're going to be more around that kind of blues shuffle, which, by the way, I really like that sound, because a lot of people would go for the chung, chung, but actually using the triads with little kind of licks interspersed is really, it sounds great. Is that because, in a sense, you're used to playing, I know I've just gone off topic slightly, everyone who knows me knows I do that. Is that because you're used to playing with a band? Because the way you were phrasing that just then was you were leaving a lot of space. So in my mind, what I immediately was doing, and I had to stop myself, was singing over the top of you, or I was hearing like Steve kind of playing like some Hammond parts in the background around what you were doing. So could you do it again, but give us an example? Because when you were playing that, like, I don't know how many people would do it the same. Just show us what you were doing again, because it seems like you're playing. Are you generally using triads in the way that you're phrasing things there, with some open bass notes underneath? What are you doing?
Yeah, so essentially, I was just using 3 notes at a time. So for that little excerpt I did, shall I switch my camera? Shall we use the
high definition?
Hopefully I've got it in the right position. Yeah, hopefully you can see that. So basically, I was based around the 5th fret, and we know there's an A at fret 5 of the low E, so I'm playing that, and then I'm also playing fret 5 of the D string and fret 6 of the G string. Now, these 2 notes are basically the essential notes you need to form like an A7 chord. So the root, this is the flat 7, and this is the 3rd. Don't worry if you're not au fait with exactly what those are, but the idea is that what you need to know is they're the kind of important notes to get the sound. And then what I'm doing is I'm playing a specific rhythm that kind of implies that swung feel. So I'm playing beat 1, and then I'm playing the and of 2. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4. And then in between, I'm almost like thinking of the drums, kind of in the back, well, not in the background, but you know what I mean, like accompanying. And for the D7, I'm basically doing the same thing. So I'm playing a D at fret 5 of the A string. And then actually the shape I play for the A, which was 5 on the D and 6 on the G, I'm just moving down to be 4 on the D and 5 on the G. So it's literally, it's just like a fret lower with each note.
Is that quite a good exercise as well, though, Nat? Because once you know what notes make a chord, and you get away from just thinking about the chord shapes that you learn, which are either first position or like basic bar chords, but people tend to use full shapes. I think what we're seeing there is that what you're doing is you're making your life simpler by knowing what the notes are, so that you're creating triads that are very similar but within a confined space. So it feels to me like you can do a lot more with your picking hand to add in that drum percussive element, which is making your playing sound really quite cool, because it's groovy, but you're not really doing a lot with your left hand. Is that something that a lot of players do? Is that just more something that you kind of do? Because it sounds almost like, okay, it's like a Jules Holland.
Yeah.
Like, again, I'm hearing on the drums, which would fit perfectly with what you're doing. So
yeah, completely. Yeah, I think it's about playing. It's sort of about playing what you need to play, but not necessarily playing any more than that. But and as you say, Andy, it does free you up, because I'm not playing, I'm not playing really kind of big shapes that require lots of fingers. I've got it kind of makes it easier to get to the next chord almost, because I don't have to move too much, and that's because, like we said, I'm literally just moving down one fret to get the next chord, essentially, or across a string. And the same is true actually if we go back to the A7. To get an E7 from this, all you do is move that shape up one fret in the other direction. So to get the D7, we went one fret down towards the headstock of the guitar. To get the E7, starting from the A7, we go one fret up towards the body of the guitar. So that means then we go to our D, no fruity note, and we go up to the E7, back to the D.
So in essence, what's cool, is this the type of thing along with the blues vocab that the guys are going to learn? So will they kind of learn those sequences and then you're going to add in melody over the top, or is it more that that's the backing track? I'm just thinking.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I suppose, yeah, what I'd aim to do with the backing track is to give you all like a kind of full band kind of backing track thing. So bass, drums, and probably some sort of like organ part on there, or piano part or something, or not. We could potentially leave that out as well. But that's the thing, we can kind of we can tailor it a little bit. But yeah, and I mean, whilst that's not something I've directly written into the stuff so far, it's a fairly easy supplementary thing to include, to give you a way in which you can kind of accompany yourself quite easily. So I don't know, maybe some of you like to sing as well or not, but if you've got something like that down, it's quite easy to then potentially sing a blues tune.
It might be nice if people are interested in that. Can you just ping Ronnie and I an email, like just say, oh, that vamping stuff that we were doing, just let us know, because actually for me, hearing you do that now, that's the kind of thing I kind of get excited about, because I'm like, okay, that sounds really good. And then if I can put my solo licks within that, so we're mixing, we were talking about this earlier, mixing chords and licks, and then I can improvise over the top. It's like, that would be, you'd be really solid really quickly. And even just then, as you were doing small triad shapes, which essentially you could do with just two fingers and then the open strings, bass strings, you were able then to add in little do-do-do-do-do. So it's almost like you're doing, that kind of thing. But one of the things I would say before people, it might be useful to have just a one-page prep sheet for those that maybe are kind of new to it, so they don't feel too scared that they're coming straight in. Maybe we could talk about that, just so that you just say, look, don't worry about the bar chords, but have these three shapes and have this pattern. I can put that together quite easily for you if you haven't got time, but I think that would be useful. I'm conscious that this is your time, and it's 8:30. Do people have questions? Because now is a great time to ask them. I mean, I think you've covered quite a lot, but it would be good if anyone wants to ask anything now, ask it now while Nat's available, because he's off touring all the time. So does anyone have anything to ask before I kind of say, Nat, go and put your kids to bed? Or have you done that already?
I have done that already, but whether they're asleep or not remains to be seen. It's quite quiet, so that's generally a good sign. Although sometimes it can be a sign that mischief is occurring. So we shall see. All will be revealed. But does anybody have anything they'd like to ask? No worries if not. But I just don't want to obviously finish up having missed anything.
Will you be covering things like sequences?
Question.
Sequencing ideas, Joe Bonamassa, Eric Johnson.
I see what you're saying,
Rob. Probably way beyond the scope, but just kind of basic snippets of that kind of thing would be good.
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's some room for that kind of thing in terms of looking at how you could take a group of notes and continue moving upwards with those, for example. These kind of things, right? The sort of fives and all that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely some scope for that. And if that would be something you'd be interested in, Rob, then there'd definitely be some other things I could kind of put your way as well. Yeah, so I guess to an extent we can absolutely refer to that, although I suppose the main focus will be kind of building some vocabulary to begin with.
Could I make a suggestion just for now, someone who's been doing this online stuff for a very long time, with all the different series I've kind of had to be doing just while we were kind of bringing in new teachers and things, is actually things develop as they go. So, you know, if you want to go down a certain line and you'll find that it's really useful to ask questions at the end. It's different with the Blitzing guitar series, the fingerstyle stuff, because it's like a set thing. Everybody knows this week we're studying Way by Collis Jobin for, you know, doing, you know, alternating fingerstyle and all that kind of stuff. Or we're studying bosses. So it's like, okay, that's this. But because this is more improvisation based, I think it really is worth asking questions. You know, so I know it's not so easy when you're watching us teach, because you're doing this and you're watching, you're going from one to the other. But because you get the video afterwards, you will come up with questions in your mind. You might go, I'd love to focus on that. Do send them through, because I think stuff like this can be followed up in other courses with Nat rather than trying to cram it all in. And also it means that it's open. We have some questions. Rob was just wondering, he just said, joining notes, Nat, for each session will be really good. You might not need lots for every session. It may just be that singular PDF or whatever will suffice, but if you feel it's necessary, that's good. He was saying, will there be tabs too? I'm presuming that there will be.
There'll absolutely be tabs, yeah, totally. There'll absolutely be tabs. And of course, as well as the tabs, you know, we'll be playing through the licks, and I'll play through the licks during the lesson for you. And so you'll obviously have access to that as well in terms of being able to
Is there music notation as well? Is it music
and
tab?
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah,
cool.
I always tend to do both, even if you know, even if you're not someone who reads notation necessarily. But I've always thought that having it there is a helpful start to sort of seeing how it looks anyway. So I'd do that as well.
Here's a good question for you. How much do you think in minor pentatonic and a blues in A versus using other scales which fit the major tonality of the chords? That's a good question. I think about that a lot. I know what I might say, but I'm more interested in what you might say because you're the blues god. So,
so how much do you think in A minor pentatonic in the blues in A versus using other scales? Right, I see. So so the what you're saying with the questions, Spyros, is that you're basically there's more than one option, right? On an A7 and a D7 and an E7, there's more than one option. So basically, I think in order to it kind of depends. I guess if I'm playing a blues, largely I would think of minor pentatonic most of the time. But there are other. You know, there's like a Mixolydian in A, for example, and you could do the same. You could do the same thing in D and E. That starts to sound a bit more jazzy when you throw some of those things in. So that's a consideration, you know, in terms of that sound, if that's something you want. But I think largely if I'm playing a blues, I try to sort of use my... I try to use my minor pentatonic, but kind of manipulate those notes a little bit to make them fit each of the chords, which is kind of, you know, part of the idea we're going to touch on with looking at the arpeggios.
I think we said something. I was talking with Nat last night, and because my background, what is your background actually? Because I started as a classical guitarist and then played in bands, obviously, did a degree in classical music, then went and did blues, and then went and did whatever, and then you kind of do a bit of everything when you become a session musician. What's your staple background?
Yeah, so I guess one of the first things I ever learned was... This is one of the first things I ever learned on a classical guitar, on a nylon string guitar, but learning kind of popular repertoire, you know. Yeah, we used to do all sorts of stuff. We did like Clapton stuff, Rod Stewart stuff when I was first learning with my teacher at school for the 20-minute sessions, and then from there, I suppose, yeah, I kind of really got into playing blues and really kind of lived that for a while in terms of like just not listening to anything else. But then I kind of got into jazz stuff, and I've always liked funk and soul stuff as well. So, and then kind of these days, I find myself playing a whole range of stuff. But I always found the blues really helpful as a kind of a starting point. The blues is the roots, everything else is the fruits, as the saying goes. And I've really found that to be true, in terms of being able to turn my hand to lots of things, particularly where guitar soloing's concerned. The blues is, as we've just been discussing, minor pentatonic, and if you think of great guitar solos, 9 times out of 10 they're minor pentatonic based, or certainly have some element of that. So I suppose when you're going to teach it, you'll be focusing on the scale of the minor pentatonic, but just to go over somebody again saying, are you going to pay attention to those notes? It's knowing that on an A7, the important note there, I suppose, is the C sharp, and how to play around that so that you're not clashing always playing the C. So, I mean, Clapton does it lots, doesn't he? He's using a minor pentatonic pattern, but he's sliding just onto certain notes. And the other thing that I'm kind of, because you often don't get taught, I think you see things as you get more experienced at thinking, well, actually, it's the dominant seventh notes that happen to be why I can play minor pentatonic over major a lot of the time, and pinpointing those within there. Just to say, Neil Crawford was just saying, will we get a video afterwards? Yes, everything is recorded. If I'm not on it, Nat will press record. Otherwise, Nat, you'll have to do what I do and just re-record it all again, which is always fun. And Rob was saying, to expand on Swaros, will you cover ideas of navigating changes and dealing with the 4 and 5 chords? Yeah, so Rob, we will a little bit, absolutely, and that's where, like in that second lesson where the arpeggios come into play, that will relate to that, and also just this idea of then saying, okay, well, I've got 5 notes in my A minor pentatonic, I've got my 3 different arpeggios for the 3 chords in the blues. Where are the similarities and where are the differences there with each chord? So you take the 5 notes of A minor pentatonic, look at the notes of your A7 chord, and you spot where the similarities are, and you do the same thing for both the D7 and the E7, and then that enables you to use the pentatonic to kind of more clearly identify and outline the changes, and that way we're sort of using the 5 notes we have in an intelligent way to mark the chords, but because we're only sticking to those 5 notes, and those are kind of the notes that the bluesy vocabulary is traditionally made up from, it means we retain the kind of authentic blues sound, which is, what all the greats do so well. They seldom deviate from those 5 notes, and that's something that's always amazed me. There are so many great blues players, they use the same 5 notes, but they sound so incredibly different from one another.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
I'm conscious of time, so we've got a couple more questions that just came through by email, which might be worth asking. The various licks that we're going to be looking at, are the various licks directly relatable to the chord shapes mixed with the pentatonic patterns, i.e., no theory or fretboard knowledge? Will somebody be able to kind of look at it and get it? But I presume those licks will be. But then again, you could take one lick and play the same lick over all 3 chords, but the sound that will have harmonically, guys, will obviously vary. Like when Nat and I are playing together and we do gigs and I write a song or something and Nat kind of plays something over the top, it's like, okay, if you're looking... Sorry, I'm kind of answering the question myself here. Sorry, Nat. But do you not find like sometimes when you come when we're in the studio and you've got to do a pop song, the blues stuff still comes back in because it can come up with a really good riff that almost becomes an ostinato or a repetitive pattern that actually links all the chords together, even though the lick is exactly the same the whole time. Yeah. So yes, they will be related to the chords. But definitely, it could be the same one. So in a way, my question has always been, like when I'm coming up with a melody, whether it's a vocal melody or it's a guitar riff or a melody, it's like, how does it relate to to every chord? Because it's like, how does that sound? You know what I mean? It's like the way like some drummers hear a one in a different place to where I hear the one. You know, I mean, I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that, but it's like, it's a good question. Will they be directly related? I mean, yes, they definitely will be. But
Yeah, and I think the fact that we're basing ourselves around position 5, you know, with these different chords, and the licks will be around position 5, so it's certainly going to be very easy to see where the chords are in relation to the lick you're playing, because we're essentially going to base ourselves in and around frets 5, 6, 7, and 8. Largely, maybe we'll deviate very slightly from that. You know, borrow a note 1 or 2 frets below from the position we are. But so yeah, it's going to be fairly simple to kind of relate what you're playing to the chord shape you've played fairly closely.
And you sent me something earlier. You said connecting chords, and I'm just going to preview it quickly, and then maybe this is a nice thing just to end on, because I really. Otherwise, you're just giving us all your time. You're just doing the course right now, which seems kind of silly. Let me see if I can share the screen. 1 second, and then cool. Yeah, this one. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've basically given these different. So you got A minor pentatonic over A7, A7 root A. So what's the color coding?
Yeah, so the color coding was just there. It's aimed to make things easier, but the idea is, so with the first one, you've got A minor pentatonic over A7, and then underneath that you've got the A7 chord. So the idea is the red notes are the notes that are in common between the A minor pentatonic scale and the A7 chord. So you can see fret 5 on the low E, which is an A note. That's in common to both the scale and the chord. Fret 7 on the A string is in common to both the scale and the chord, and fret 5 on the D string is also in common to both the scale and the chord. So those are the red notes. The blue notes for example, in the A minor pentatonic scale at the top, you've got fret 8 on the low E, which is in blue. If you go down to the arpeggio below the A7 arpeggio, you can see actually that's fret 9. So it's 1 fret higher. So the notes in blue are basically notes that are extremely close together when you look at the scale versus the chord. And actually that particular note is an extremely important one as far as the blues goes, because it's the origin of that kind of slight tweak. So when you hear that, can't play anymore. That slight tweak. So we're not playing we're not going. I'm not playing the note dead on. I'm playing fret 8 on the low E as it is in the scale, but actually if I tweak that very slightly, it almost becomes like fret 9.
But again, I think this doesn't this pinpoint back to what we were just saying, where you're also paying attention to notes in the chords. So the notes in A7 actually, where it says third is the C sharp. That is the blue note. But we kind of call it the blue note also because the minor pentatonic, it's a semitone lower. We're actually flattening the third here. And that is essentially what blues is it not? It is kind of playing minor. I mean, you are a blues aficionado, so please tell me if I'm saying this in the wrong lingo.
No,
it's just my way of thinking about it. But I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, so if I am playing over the A7 and I want it to be very specific and add in a kind of major sound, then that blue note on the second scale is the one that I would adapt from the first scale.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then you're going on to this A minor pentatonic over D7. So you've got green here. Could you just explain that to us a little bit? Yeah,
so the green notes are I've just used a different colour there. So they are essentially the notes that are in common between A minor pentatonic and D7. And I've just done them a different colour to distinguish from the relationship between the scale and the A7 chord. But essentially, any of the green notes in that sort of second group, so A minor pentatonic over D7 with the D7 chordal notes, those are notes in common between both the scale and the chord. And then the same is true for the E7 as well. And yeah, essentially, I've just done the notes as purple notes, just again to distinguish them from the previous ones.
Oh,
But
that's
you've
on the
also got
is that
these
on the
kind
next
of
page?
blue.
Sorry.
No, no
There
worries.
you go.
You've got these kind of blue notes again there as well, which you
What's
can kind of-
interesting, just to say as well, guys, I don't know whether do you see my cursor moving when I'm sharing this screen?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so when you've got this A minor pentatonic over D7, guys, this thing again of knowing what notes are in the chord. So in the chord of D7, if you go down here, Nat's written that it's a flat 7. Don't worry so much about the theory at the moment, but do worry about the note that he's written. So this C here, okay, I was saying earlier that by knowing what notes are in the chords, it's really good, because this blue note that's up at the top, which is the flattened third in the scale here, okay, is actually the 7th in this chord. So it's very useful to know the notes on the fretboard, like just download an app or something and just start learning them, because once you know a bit of basic theory, I'll stop sharing for a second, right? If you know a bit of basic theory, and that is, okay, there are 4 God chords, major, minor, augmented, diminished. Just start with 2, major and minor for your blues, right? Just know how those chords are made, right? Root note 4 semitones higher, 3 semitones higher, and the opposite way around for a minor, right? If you know that and you know your notes on the fretboard and you know your scales, you really can pinpoint the notes of the chord, and that's the key to working with someone like Nat, because that's what you're going to learn. And then really the art of becoming good at phrasing comes from playing all the time, and also just listen to as much music as possible and try and play it back, because once you've got the knowledge, unless you're actually trying to I'm not saying you should all go and transcribe stuff, but unless you're listening to music and you're trying to re-emulate what that is, your progress is going to be slower. So the theory is like the beginning of it, right? And just doing the bits that are useful. Just because a lot of theory, unless you're using it practically, just seems completely pointless. But if you use it in a practical sense, it's incredibly useful. And that document, I'm just looking there, it breaks everything down. It's really clear, and I'm like, okay, now I've got my notes I can play, and that's going to be really obvious. You know what I mean? So it's good. I think probably we're nearly at 9 o'clock. so much for half an hour, but that's the way it is. I can't remember the exact dates of the course. They're all on the website. What I'll do is I will share the PDF, which is just a breakdown of what's on the site. It's just copied those onto one document. I will send that through with the dates of each one. I mean, it would be lovely to see people. It's nothing to do with me. This is Nat's course. But for those that are really interested in it, I don't think you're going to really find someone better. To have Nat and myself, and then Jamie McCready and Gary and people like that, they're all excellent, and we all specialise in certain things. But out of all of us, really,
Will that include the cost?
Sorry,
Will that include the cost?
what do you mean?
The cost of the course? Because it's not
What,
free,
this
is it?
conversation? No, this isn't.
No, not this one. I'm talking about when you do it.
It's all on the website.
Right, as long as it is, that's fine.
Yeah, no, on every course it says what the cost is on the website.
That's good. That's all.
I can't remember what exactly it is right now, but you can double
That's
check
all right.
it.
We'll look at it.
Brilliant. I'll put links on the PDF, which has links with the date to the course, which you can just click on, and then you can go and find out about it. And I'll put the pricings in as well. But I'll probably do that tomorrow, because I'll be teaching from 7:45 till 5:45, and I only get 10-minute break, so I'll do it in the evening. But if you have any questions other than that, you can email them through. But I think that I would just like to say thank you for your time, because
no worries, and thank you everyone for coming along and checking things out, and thank you for your questions. And yeah, I hope to see you very soon, and thank you.
Oh, that's good. Just somebody said, thanks, Nat. They said, slightly struggling with the colour coding. Okay, but I get the drift. Okay, so if you're colourblind, Nat and I will have a chat about that and make sure that, it's clear for you. That'll be cool. Okay,
no worries.
excellent.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Nat, are you going to stay on for a couple of minutes, and then just so you can talk with Ronnie? And ladies and gentlemen, I will say goodnight to everyone else just now. We'll see you soon. And yeah, I'll put the PDF together with the breakdown of what's on the website already, with the price of each individual course, or just the whole lot together. And I'll put links so that you can come and join that. And I think we're starting, is it in June?
It's
June and July.
That's right.
Great.
I believe the first one is the 17th of June.
I'm glad you know. Right, okay, ladies and gentlemen, as Nat plays us out, I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to slowly kind of remove us all so I can talk to Roy. We'll see you soon. Thanks for now.